the bulk of this conversation tonight on The Last Word. We'll focus on what the president had to say, but I want to put it to my guests, just what we witnessed there from earlier events in Parliament. I'll start with you, Kigoro. What did you think about that? Because we've had one of the members say that it was all ODM members. There would have been different ways to be able to express their dissatisfaction or whatever the issues were, but that what we saw, the conduct and the manner in which they expressed themselves was improper. Do you agree?
I think we've seen these types of thing happen in our democratic practice. In 1997, Senator Nyong'o here will tell you how they heckled Moi and told him that there would be no budget without constitutional reforms, and that led to constitutional reforms. We've also seen that in other countries, for example, in South Africa, where you've had a very irreverent treatment of President Jacob Zuma by Malema and his party every time he has come to do the State of the Nation address. So these things can happen in democracies, and it is not necessarily a problem. I think those who express themselves in the way that they did are within a democratic spectrum, and that has got to be respected as such. And other people could have done it differently, and I've seen opinion to the effect that they shouldn't have done that, and there are other ways of dealing with the situation. But I think there are also other ways. I mean, the heart of what we saw today is the fact that our politics is dysfunctional, and we don't have civilized channels to disagree among ourselves. So that forces people to go into fairly disagreeable methods of expressing disagreement.
Yeah. Prof, do you agree? Because there are those who say you can be dissatisfied, but the question for many was, what did that achieve? Were you embarrassed watching those events unfold?
Well, I will say that I actually agree with George that in parliamentary democracy, you can see worse things than that. Yes. But I think the symbol to me which was important was a whistle. That while we can dwell on the etiquette and the decor and the procedure and all that, there is somewhere in the nation where there is deep dissatisfaction. And that so far, the president has not addressed himself to that. And it was indeed evidenced by his speech. I thought that I was listening to an economic survey, which we are expecting in 2 months' time. The president actually gave us the economic surveys 2 months ahead of time. If I were the president, and over the last couple of months, he should have been addressing himself to the real state of the nation. For example, when the opinion polls say that 53% of Kenyans believe we are not going in the right direction, that 53% was perhaps represented by those people who are saying, even in this parliament, what we are doing today is not addressing itself to the direction we should be going. And secondly, you remember in the last State of the Nation address, the president talked about TJRC, Truth, Reconciliation and Justice. He didn't mention anything about it today. The president gave us a long list of corrupt people, and today he only reminded us that the cases are in court. But we know from experience that cases go to court and they are not prosecuted to the full. And I think this is behind that dissatisfaction. But more so, I do agree with George that in democracies you are expected to dissent, even when the rules of the House don't allow you to dissent. When you feel very strongly, you can dissent in a certain way. For example, I have never attended the State of the Nation address given by the president. I don't think I will ever attend, because I'm fundamentally opposed to the way in which this government was formed. And as a matter of principle, the president is my friend, and I accept that he is there. I will not try and remove him from that position. But I don't think I can bring myself to sit there and accept that this is a legitimate person to give us a State of the Union. That's the way I react myself. I don't go.
All right. All right. What do you think, Senator Matani?
Well, interesting to hear the comments from my colleagues, and you know, they are definitely entitled to their opinion. But you know, I think really that at this time and age in the 21st century, after so many sessions of parliament and maturation of our democracy and politics, I think I lack a better word to use for that kind of conduct. I think I can simply define it as childish. I mean, it's unwarranted. It's not necessary. It doesn't. The question that you asked earlier, you know, what would those members of parliament go and tell their constituents? What did they achieve? I mean, to begin with, let's start from here. The president was discharging a constitutional duty. According to our constitution, Article 10, Article 132, which requires the president to give a State of the Nation address, Article 240, which recognizes the president as the chairperson of the National Security Council and mandates that the president will give that report to parliament at that time. I mean, why wouldn't a member of parliament, and let me tell you, Sophie, why I vehemently disagree with that, because you can allow that to somebody who is in the street and say, really, that person may not have an opportunity or a privilege to air their issues or their sentiments. But for a privileged member of parliament who has been elected, given the free way and the free will that they can stand up and say that and be listened to and protected by the law, I think it is completely unnecessary and unwarranted. And I'll tell you what really in black and white that's supposed to achieve. It's supposed to achieve cheap popularity, if you ask me, for those members of parliament. I mean, and you know, because it's all political showcasing what they are trying to do there. If you look at those individual members of parliament, you will most probably find that their records, their achievements in their own constituencies are you know, not what is expected by the members of parliament. I mean, they're trying to cover up for what they have not achieved at the constituencies. But let me summarize it this way. I think it is a shame to the House of Parliament, and I say this quite passionately too, because you know, Parliament is supposed to be a house that is honored. When we are elected into that house, I mean, the members of public need to believe that what we do in there is honorable, well thought out, and proper business. I think it's very shameful for those members of parliament to do that.
Let's talk about the speech. And right from the get-go, when the president started to speak, and throughout his speech, there are two words that resonated and kept coming through that speech. It was the main theme, if one would say, nationalist covenant. He broke it down at the very beginning, and with each matter, whether it's healthcare, education, infrastructure, he roped in the matter of nationalist covenant. What did that say to you? What did you think the president set out to communicate with that kind of a theme today?
That's for me. I think the nationalist covenant as a term for use in public discourse in this country is new. I heard it for the first time from the president today. So it's a term that we are going to try and get used to and to try and understand what it actually means. What I think, what I can guess is what the president was trying to do was to capture the essence of Article 10 of the Constitution, which is the one that he should speak to in the address that he was making today. This is an address around the values that bring people together and make them one country and make them one people. So we are a country, but we are nation building. And nation building is at one level the software of what measures people's otherwise disparate identities and makes them one people. So I think that is the kind of thing that you're speaking to. He was appealing to some emotion on the part of the public, to the effect that we've got one identity and so on and so forth. I think that is the thing that the president tried to bring out in his speech today.
All right, Professor, because at one point you also said the opposition disagrees with government in their understanding of a nationalistic covenant, and yet they also have a responsibility in achieving the same. Do you disagree with his definition of that covenant and the manner in which it should be played out in society?
Well, I think that speech was written by a political scientist. The word national covenant may not be understood by 70% of Kenyans. But as a political scientist, I know that national covenant has something to do with what people call a social contract. We come together because we leave behind our individualities, and we say, let us accept to be under one government, on one authority, because it's good for us.
Yes.
It's good for all of us. And that was true in 1963. If you remember well, in 1963 was one of the most democratic elections in this country. We have only had another democratic election. That is 2002. In 2002, Kenya was rated the happiest nation after the election. In fact, what is interesting, 98% of Luos voted for Kibaki. And Raila went to Nyeri and it was called some word there, Jamba?
Jaba.
In Nyeri, I was there.
Yes.
And Kenyans were really won. In fact, ordinary Kenyans arrested policemen on the street for corruption. Today, that spirit of nationhood is gone. It's a dysfunctional nation. In fact, the president came nearer to expressing this frustration when he was in Israel, not here. When he suddenly said, Kenya is such a corrupt country, we are all corrupt. Because he can see the dysfunctional nature of our nation. People are even stealing examination papers. There's a whole industry for doing that, abolishing the whole examination council. The judiciary is not functional. In fact, the old saying, why do you have to pay a lawyer if you can hire a judge? It's so true today.
Yeah.
The police is not functioning. We have the Police Service Commission, which the executive itself has tried very much to dismantle. The Ethics and the Corruption Commission has been brought to its knees by the same executive. The president is wondering, how can this nation hold together? How can we go back to the 1963 spirit of nation building? That was so moving in the 60s when economic growth in this country was very high and very rapid. The same followed 2002.
Yes.
The NAC revolution brought some of the highest rates of growth in this country. So you are not going to cure this pressure, this issue of lack of nationhood by a whole series of projects. Those projects may be there, and you are still having a dysfunctional nation. I wish the president had addressed himself more to the theme he set in Israel of how to create the spirit of nationhood and appeal to the soul of Kenyans, not the brains of Kenyans with statistics. I think statistics are for economic survey. A state of the nation should be inspirational. It should be aspirational.
Yes.
And we would have come out and said that president has once more brought us together. Secondly, the new constitution was supposed to dismantle the authoritarian state, which has been a problem to this nation. Up to now, for example, we expected the provincial administration 5 years after the promulgation of the constitution to be dismantled so that devolution can be seriously implemented. Now today, what did the president say? He only said we're taking so much money to counties and they're not using that money properly. Yes, but so is the central government not using money properly.
All right.
What we need to say, yes, let us correct that, but let us also recognize that for the first time
Yes.
in counties,
Yes.
money is flowing around.
All right.
Certain projects are being done.
Yes.
And we should build on that, rather than try and incite Parliament against counties by what he said today. What he said today was really unfortunate because he did go further and explain other good things happening in counties.
Okay. All right. Senator Wamatangi, one of the things that some people have argued, the reason why the president focused so much on this theme